Let's take a quick tour through the Pfaff Creative Icon sewing screens. So just so you get a little bit comfortable of what you will be having on the screen at different times, depending on what stitches that you have selected, how to change around to different stitches. And one thing Pfaff is known for is giving you more than one way to do something. So just because I show you one particular way, there's usually a second way to select a stitch. So I'll show you a couple different ways to doing it. You pick the one that is best for you. So you tend to find an easy path for you to roam around the machine, but just know that there's sometimes more than one way to get to the same result. So when you turn the machine on, you do get your straight stitch. You got the information about that stitch, like what foot to use, is the IDT recommended, and any place that you have like a little drop down arrow, that means you can actually collapse that away. What the speed of the machine is, what the stitch number is, and anything that you have active, such as the active stitch technology, which is the wonderful way the machine knows how much thread to give the stitch based on how thick the fabric is, and then the IDT is engaged. Again, you can have as much of that opened up, or you can collapse it if you're not interested to have that on the screen. Over to the side here with the straight and zigzag, this would be where your stitches can be loaded from. So each of the groups of stitches you have in the main utility area, page 1, 2, 3, and 4. As you go into some of these, there are times where there's more stitches that you will need to scroll up to see. And I remember when I was stitching out my stitch book that there was times where I thought I was at the end of the stitches, like I was seeing, oh, okay, I got to the end, oh, there's 24, and I scrolled up and then realized there was even more, up to 32. Some of those menus, I think I found one that has like 40 to 50 stitches in just that one page. Now, each of these pages are kind of adjustable. So if you see this little blue corner, touch and drag it. So if you want all your stitches to kind of hang out over here, or maybe more up here, or maybe all the way open so you're not surprised when you can't see all your stitches. It's just that when you go to sew, you might want to see the stitch that you're working with. You just touch it to collapse it. So I do a lot of opening and closing of these menus. Across the top, we have different categories from utility to quilt, needle art, and you can touch and slide. So if you're looking for those groups towards the end, just slide it until you find the area you want to be in. Remember, there's always a question mark. If you have a question about what a stitch is or what one of these symbols are, touch the question mark. It will pulsate green. When you touch the stitch, it will tell you something about that stitch. Some stitches, like what we're in right now, the ribbon stitches, it'll actually have the step-by-step directions on how and when to put the ribbon in to get it to look like it's supposed to do. So once you pick a stitch, then you can close that and it will show right there on your screen. Now I am going to go back to just some utility stitches just so you can see something you're used to seeing. I'm going to even just pick a zigzag right here. So again, if I just want to have my stitches maybe a little bit higher up so I can see when I've picked that stitch, that's something that I particularly like to do. So let's go down here because this is where all the fun happens. Stitch Edit is what you're going to open up for looking for things like your stitch width. As you plus it, things will change to green if you have changed their particular settings. If you want stitch length, again, lengthen it out, lots of increments. You can even be changing this while you're sewing. And again, you come over here, you don't know what something is, touch the question mark, and it will tell you that that's the thread metering. So not so much like tension, but how much or little the thread is given to get through all the layers of fabric, which is ingenious. So sometimes I don't even try to wrap my head around it. I just let the machine do it because it turns out amazing. All right, so if you don't want something showing, you can just touch anything green and it kind of goes away. So you kind of open or close. Now let me show you one other thing, because in these little areas there's a blue part near Stitch Edit that allows you to touch it and you can bring up. Let's say you're always changing the stitch width. You can touch that arrow and move some of these functions to always be open. And then when you touch it to turn off that moving feature and you touch Stitch Edit, you've just made a copy of your things that you're doing to that stitch. So now I can make it wider or shorter, And I can do that all with these. I can put those where I want them to hang out with me, which I love. Very customizable for this particular machine. Let's say I don't need those anymore. The little X will allow it to hide out back where it belongs. So you can always go in there and add it. Remember, I touched this little corner with the icon that has a little arrow pointing out of it, and then each of the items that I could pull out have that, and I touched and dragged them out of the way. Okay, so I'm going to minimize that particular area. Stitch repeat, we do this a lot with our Stitching Cosmos, where I might have our students stitch just a single repeat of the stitch. Not as exciting when it's just a zigzag, so let's just kind of find a fun, let's do a decorative stitch, and we'll do it with a single leaf. So right now, if you are looking at the whole entire screen, you are seeing all the leaves lined up, single stitch means I just get one at a time, and then I can place those where I want them to be. If I want two, I can touch two. So there's lots of things that we'll be going into with the extra videos. Patchwork program, where you can actually program it in to sew out a certain length of a stitch. It's just amazing what we can do. If you're working with free motion, I know not with that particular stitch, but actually it will let you do it. You can tell the machine which of the free motion feet you'll actually be using. So then that way it sets it up accordingly. Tie off function. I have a lot of fun in here because I can actually set the machine to tie off at the beginning, the end, and even set it to cut the thread at the end of my sequence, all the way I want it to sew. So you get to customize all of that. This little guy will open up the whole entire screen, kind of make everything bigger. That's helpful for the embroidery mode as well, when you might be wanting to see everything on the screen that is on the screen. So Stitch Creator, this would be like programming in everything into a memory. So that means you can come over, do the letters. So if you're putting in a name, this is where you're going to add letters and stitch them out in combination, and also be able to save them. So depending on, and of course you can put in letters, you can put in decorative stitches and everything in there. Saving is that little heart at the bottom of your screen. So I'm going to just push cancel. We don't need to save anything just yet. Next over is our Stitch Creator. So if we are looking to create our own stitches, let's say you find a stitch on another brand of machine that you don't have in this machine, you can actually create it. This little grid plotting area allows you to draw out all your stitches. Now I will tell you one fun thing that I do enjoy with this, and just pull up a quick quilting stitch. How about, okay, I actually pulled up two, but that's okay. So at this point, one of the things that I do like to do is actually add a triple version of this stitch. That means this one is going to stitch out faster or more heavy than its original single version of this stitch. So anytime I'm looking for heavier stitches, I love to use the Stitch Creator just to take the stitches that are in this one machine and have them stitch out thicker without having to put on thicker thread. Balance of the machine. So if you're ever stitching out a stitch and it feels like it is not stitching out equally, maybe the forward and reverse feeding is making it look unbalanced, you can actually change the balance of this machine and make the stitches stitch. Now that usually happens when you're stitching on like a fleece or even like a corduroy, something very uneven, and this will actually help you figure out which way to change it to fix the problem. And the problem is more the fabric combination you're using, not what is wrong with the machine. So there is so many different things. There are other things over here. When we open things up for My SewNet, that is the cloud area if you are connected to My SewNet collection. And then here is our tapering options. Again, there are so many corners of this machine that we're going to be going into. But again, if you don't know what it is, touch the question mark at any time and it will bring up what it's called, and then you can just touch read about tapering. It's going to take you to the user's guide and show you right there on screen where you can start working stitch by stitch and even follow the directions how to operate some of those things that I was just showing you. So again, lots of information in here. Don't forget your techniques and tutorials, your sewing instructions, stabilizer guide. Everything is in here. pick it from A to Z. If you don't know what you're looking for, just start looking and seeing what is in this amazing machine. So we're just going to come back out of the help center, touch the little arrow to the side. You'll go back to where you're wanting. If you want to get back to a straight stitch, slide over to the utility part at the top of your screen and touch the number 1. And we're back to a straight stitch.